And we're live. Yes. So welcome to another live interview with Become a Fearless Father. And today, Cody Loughlin. I hope I said that right.
Yeah, you're pretty close. It's Loughlin.
Loughlin. All right. Now, see, I always say, look, you're either you got it or you're not. There's no close thing. So Loughlin, I apologize before we started. But
I've answered
anyway,
much worse than that.
yeah, that's good. Yeah. I know what it's like, man, with a name and people don't pronounce it right. So I always try to pronounce this as good as I can. Anyway, people, sorry for the throat. It's out for today. Man. But we're gonna make it happen anyway. Just first before we start, man, I love this, right? This says a lot about the person that's gonna hop on. Now, in this case, it says a lot about both of us, but somebody's taking the time before we even start saying that he really looks forward to this. And then Cody's going to bring the fire today, just so people know. He just put himself put the bar high. I love that.
Hey, man, you got to feel the pressure, right?
There you go, there you go. And who better than put the pressure on than yourself, right? So let's dive right in, Cody. What's in your experience, man? What's the biggest misconception when we're talking about money?
Man, that's a big question, and I appreciate you asking that. First of all, I want to say thanks to your viewers for letting me hop on with you and to listening to us and everything else. Um, I think one of the biggest misconceptions people have is that money is limited.
Mm,
And that there's only a finite amount that you get, and there's only a finite amount that you can earn or figure out a way to get to. That they don't really believe in the amount of abundance that's out there, and that there's a creation method that you can do to be able to create more wealth, create more money. And we can talk a little bit deeper about the best ways to do that personally. But I really think that a lot of people feel that they limit themselves because of that belief and that money is limited, and they say, well, we can't afford that, or I could never buy that, or
mhm.
I can't do that. I can't go to those vacations. I'll never have enough money. Like, we put those personal beliefs on money ourselves. And fortunately enough, though, we're able to take those beliefs off of them ourselves, but we have to
Mhm.
make that choice.
Exactly, absolutely true. It becomes even bigger if we think about it as entrepreneur. That's right. We put those beliefs on our kids.
That's it.
Right? So we
That
gotta watch.
they will
We gotta
follow
be
the same
very.
footsteps. And so our words are very powerful.
Yep.
And I think that small changes in the way that you talk, especially regarding money, but really about just about anything in life. If you say something along the lines like, I can't afford that, as opposed to
Hmm.
if you just change your mindset, just a small thing in just a couple words and say, how do I afford that?
Yep.
That little change in perspective can have massive outcomes on the way that your relationship with money, but not only that, but just relationship with kids. If they say, hey, I can't get straight A's, well, you can, because somebody else has done it, right? If anybody else has done something, you can do it too. You just have to say, how do I get that? And maybe yours is you have to study 3 hours instead of one. Are you willing to do that? Is a different story. But saying I can't is not a true statement.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I like that. I like that. Yeah, we're having challenges with our kids where they really love Super Zing. Now that might not mean a lot to the average audience. It's little plastic toys that they play with, and they have cars and stuff like that. And they sell them everywhere, right? So every time we walk by, the kids are like, I want that one, I want that one, I want that one. And then at first, in the beginning, we were saying, like, look, we can't afford it, right? And now it's like, look, man, mommy and daddy are not going to buy it.
Yeah,
So
you got to
you
change that.
figure out,
You got to watch that, because if you say I can't afford it, and then 5 minutes later you're somewhere else in the store and you're whipping out that card or you're whipping out that cash to buy something, they're seeing that.
yep,
And so that little credibility, you got to watch that, because they'll, they kids are amazingly perceptive.
yeah,
They may not express it, but they see stuff, and you're just like, you gotta, So having that conversation with them and say, hey, we don't need this, or we're not going to buy it, is a totally different thing. But yeah, I know exactly the feeling, because I have a 6 and an 8-year-old, man, and we go through the store, and it's like, I want to buy this, I want to buy that, I want to buy this, and it's like, we were in the dollar store yesterday, and everything's a dollar. So I can't be like, we can't afford that or anything.
yeah,
Well, I said that to my daughter yesterday. I said, hey, no, we're not here to buy that. We're getting something specific for your school project. And she was like, "Oh, okay." And she picks it up, starts walking with him. Like, "What are you doing?" She goes, "Oh," and she like pulls out her little wad of money. She goes, "I got it." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So now she's, she's
There you go.
preemptively getting me at the store now. So
I like that. I like that. Yeah. So we'll dive into that further on. Cody, before we continue, man, people died like, dude, who is this guy talking about finance? Why should I listen to him? So share a little bit about your background. And of course, I always like to share or like have you share a little bit, like, the entrepreneur dad, like marriage, how many kids. We just mentioned 6 and 8 year old. So share a little bit about that so we got the complete picture.
yeah, sure. I'd be happy to dive into it. So my background is this: I've opened 13 different companies, and
Mm,
3 of them I've scaled over $1 million. My companies have done over $200 million in sales, and so I have had a lot of experiences. Some amazing, some I had to learn a lot from. As we'll just put it
mm,
that way. I don't really see them as failures because the ones where I crashed taught me what not to do, and the ones that were got to be successful. And so, going through that, um, I was a finance major in college, came out of college, knew absolutely nothing about money, knew nothing about finance. Just like as if you're a chemistry major, you can't make plastic. And so I really kind of started the journey back then of wanting to learn, more and more about money. So I grew up
mm,
in an entrepreneurial family, and I immediately became an entrepreneur out of college. And, I didn't do the 9 to 5 thing. Really wasn't my focus. Within 3 years, had built up a $1 million business and
mm.
had
Oh,
4 of them. And thought I was doing amazing. Thought I was just, the best business person on the planet. And
yeah.
I got a real, so at 27 years old on paper, I was a millionaire. Um, but it was just paper. And so at 28 years old, unfortunately and fortunately, I would say, I was $700,000 in the hole and
Mm,
no job and in foreclosure and tax liens and everything else. So I got a real roller coaster ride early in my life. I got married at the time too, right in the middle of that. So my wife got to come along for the same exact roller coaster ride, and really kind of dove in hard when I became a commercial banker. I wanted to learn about businesses. I figured that I learned how to make money from my parents, but I really didn't know anything about running businesses or budgeting or building a good foundation.
mm,
I also knew that there had to be a better way to do things because I had just crashed and burned pretty hard. And so I started diving into personal finance really, really, really hard. And I found out about a thing called FIRE, which is the acronym for Financially Independent, Retire Early, and
mm,
blew my mind. And basically, the concept is that you have passive income that exceeds your monthly bills.
mhm,
And so at that point, being in a really, really bad place and a really, really bad hole and finding out about a lot of stuff that I really had never been exposed to or talked about or anything else, I made a decision that I wanted to be fire in 10 years. And so I said, how am I going to do this? And
mhm,
so I sat down and I made a plan. And plans don't go as they're always planned out to go, but mine and definitely did not. It went in a whole bunch of different directions. But at 39 years old, I had gone from basically bankrupt 10 years earlier to being able to retire early as a fire definition. And
mm,
I still do a lot. And so at last year, I decided that I wanted to share the things that I don't believe that our schools are teaching. And I
mhm,
there's teaching them because I've never got taught them in school. I guess that'd be the first thing. And everyone I've ever talked to in my life is like, why don't they teach anything about money in school? And so I've kind of started on this journey with Money Talkers now to educate parents and arm parents with um, the tools and the information and hopefully the confidence as well, because it's a big part of it, to have
mhm,
money talks with their kids and to strengthen the relationship between the parent and their kids as well, so that over time their kids can know that throughout life, as we get these challenges, that they're able to go to their parents and have an open, honest conversation about money. And that's where the idea kind of born from.
Oh, love that. Absolutely love that. It's so important. I want to dive into that in a second. So let me ask you a question. It came up, and it's a weird question. It's maybe a little bit out of context. You mentioned like you got married right in your roughest time. You still married with that same woman?
Oh yeah, yeah. You know, she was we had known each other a long time. We
Yeah.
were really, really good friends. We always kind of popped up into each other's lives. Um, and she was there when things were going, you know, well.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't there because of that. And when things went really, really bad, you know, I remember a conversation we had. Of course, you know, as when I was making a lot of money with very little thought about what I was going to do with it, about a condo on the beach, and we sat out, and I had a pair of chairs out on the porch, and we sat out there in foreclosure, all four companies closing, no idea what we were going to do in the middle of the financial crisis, and we sat out there and we just kind of smiled and looked at each other and just were like, we gotta figure this thing out, you know. But there was never ever like a it was always a team. You know, that was one thing when we got married, that we made a commitment to say that we weren't going to ever consider divorce or anything like that. And so
Mm-hmm.
by making that commitment, then the rest of the problems that come up is just something you got to tackle.
Yeah, exactly. It's
So
all
yeah,
about
we've been married I think 13 years now.
beautiful.
Yep.
I
Getting
love
ready
it. I
for a
love it.
14th anniversary. So
Nice, nice. I love that, man. I love that. Sorry, I wanted to ask because that says a lot about your wife, right? That
yeah.
the hardest time comes and she's there, and just like you mentioned, right? She stepped up. I went to something similar, and my wife completely stepped up and actually took some hot coals out of the fire. So
Yeah.
I always like to hear those kind of stories, and you know, show our wives that we really appreciate and respect them for doing
Absolutely.
that, right?
So about a year and a half ago, about a year and a half ago, I just sold my companies, and I was basically in the dream job that I would have killed for. And at any other point in my life, I was just really, really tired. I wanted to be around my family really bad.
Mm,
I've been working 70 hours a week for 8 years.
well,
Basically, and I started right before my daughter was born, so it was basically her whole life. And so
mm,
um, I watched all these online videos, and I'd been an internet marketer for most of my life, and I watched all these online videos with Russell Brunson and ClickFunnels and all this stuff. And I mean, I
yeah.
was 6, 8 hours deep into it, you know. And I walked in at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, "Hey, I think I'm gonna quit my job." And she was like, "Okay," you know. I'm like, "Wait, wait, wait! Don't you want to know what I'm doing?" You know. And she's like, "Nah, you'll figure it out." She's like, "I believe in you," you know. And so like, but I was all geeked out, you know, because I was like, "Man, I gotta I gotta talk."
I want to talk about this though.
Yeah, you're good. Like, you know, and so that's kind of the trust level. I've been very fortunate to have with her. You know, that she just kind of she believes in me and wants me to do things that, you know, I want to do. So, and it's been
Yeah.
really, really beneficial for both of us throughout our lives.
Exactly, exactly. I love that. All right, so let's go into the next topic, man. Or you know, what you
Yeah.
continue what you're talking about. You mentioned like, look, I started Money Talkers because this is exactly a thing that they're not teaching in school. Dude, what's up with that? Because it's not just that. It's like the way I see it at the moment is like the most important topics that we figured out as entrepreneurs and entrepreneur dads, right, are just not taught in school. Mindset, right? I mean, how important is that, right?
Yeah.
How to
You
actually learn,
yeah.
right? I mean, you have to learn when you're in school, but they don't teach you how to really learn, which is beyond me. And then money, right? That's like, all right. So go ahead, man.
Yeah, no, listen, it's the same thing. It's just, and I've never met anybody that was like, yeah, no, you know what, we're good. We don't need to do that. Like every single person I've ever talked to is like, why don't they teach any of this stuff in school? You know, and so I can tell you a quick story. I know the first time that it really, really hit me, and so I was 19 years old, and I was a marine biology major. I was actually a biology major in
Mhm.
college, and because I wanted to be a marine biologist. But I took a finance class for the first time ever. Finance teacher's talking, and he explains to me compound interest. And he says, you know, if you save $2,000 a year from this summer for the next 4 summers, and you just leave it in there and it rolls and compound interest and this and the other, he's like, you'll have more money than if you put $25,000 a year away from 50 to 60. And I remember sitting there, man, and I was like, what did he just say? I'm like, how does $8,000 turn into more than $250,000? You know, and I'm sitting there and like I'm going through the math, and I'm like, I had this bright, like, aha moment, like, wow, this is amazing. And then I had this feeling come over me where I was so like angry because I was thinking in my head, I happened to be out of my high school, 350 graduating kids from my class. Like maybe like 30% went to college from my school. And
Uh-huh.
then of that, like, I can't imagine of that percentage, like how many were actually in a finance class where somebody explained this and they were paying attention or they went to class that day. Right. And I remember sitting there and I'm like, why did I learn this? Like I took pottery in high school, man. Like I made a coaster, you know what I mean? Like I made cutting boards in wood shop class. Like what in the world was that for? And here I am, I'm sitting here thinking like, dude, anybody can be a millionaire. And I mean, I'm just sitting there like, what? Anybody can be a millionaire and no one's talking about this? Like, I
Yeah.
get if you don't take the action on it, but holy cow, how are we not teaching this in schools?
Yeah.
And we started talking about this stuff. And and I just remember being like, it hit me again, like 24 years old. I was on my parents' car insurance, like my sister actually wrecked my truck. And my mom was like, hey, you gotta go get car insurance. And I'm like, how do you do that? She was like, mind you, man, at 24, I own two companies, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I went to be a mortgage broker right out of school, and I sat down, and I didn't know what a mortgage was. I was a finance major. Like, how did we don't teach the like basics of things that are going to affect our lives, and it's just not in our schools, and it just drives me nuts. And then further along in life, I started really diving into really learning about entrepreneurship and about successful mindsets. And, I did a lot of Stephen Covey work, which I really, really
Mm.
enjoy. The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And then I really started kind of diving into abundance and, basically how the way that you look at the world is your choice as opposed to the way that the world actually is, you know?
Mhm.
And so what your response to stimulus is your ability to the way that you are going to see the world, right? If you're looking for negativity, I 100% guarantee you can find negativity. If
Oh
you're
yeah.
looking for, opportunities, I guarantee you can find opportunities. But we don't talk about this stuff in school. We talk about, how many facts can you memorize? And how many how many formulas can you memorize?
Mhm.
Because the school system was set up at a time where there wasn't an ability to go out and educate yourself. And right now, there's so much available information out there that it's almost overwhelming. And so there's a lot of people, like myself, that are out there that are trying to curate this information and put it together in packaging so that you can not only just be able to have access to all that information, but an actual kind of a structured information,
Mhm.
where you can basically set out on a goal. And when you have that goal, you can then find someone who can basically take you along the journey to get to that goal now. It's not like it used to be. It used to be like you had to find a somebody locally that if you were lucky enough to know them and they would talk to you, type of deal.
Mhm.
Now, man, whatever your goal is you want it to be, you can go on the internet and find somebody that will either teach you for free, or B, if it's a more structured, bigger project type of deal, or you need more personal attention, like there's generally educators that will come out to teach you the things that you want to get to.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I hope, my sincerest hope is that we get this into our schools,
Mhm.
that we get financial education into schools, that we get personal financing, budgeting, entrepreneurship, successful mindsets. Like we're doing ourselves a disservice for for the future generations that
Mhm.
we could do these things, because one of the main reasons that for me, I kind of joke that I want to keep people from having to go to Dave Ramsey, because I was a Dave Ramsey student, where
Mhm.
he's the financial piece. Like once you've basically fallen so far into the debt hole, or like you're so bad with money, you're just like, somebody help me. You turn to Dave Ramsey, it's like my whole goal is to basically like keep people from having to need him out there. And so, but I also have a bigger ramification out of that, is that, if you're in a good position financially, you have the ability to make decisions based on what you feel is right and wrong and where the best positive outcomes can come from. When you're money strapped and you're stressed, you take whatever you can get, right? And so there's a bigger goal out there that I think younger people in the world right now can make big impacts and make big differences and do big things if they're armed with the information about money that they need.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, man. So we got about 5 minutes before we end this, and I definitely want to touch on this subject. So because what you say is true, right? It's not in schools. However, we can argue about that, and maybe that's not going to change. Who knows? Hopefully it is. Maybe it's not, right? So it's on us. Let's find what we can control, right? So Let's go to us. So how do we go about educating our kids about finance?
Yeah. So one of the big misconceptions you talked about earlier, you asked me about misconceptions. One of the big misconceptions about money, is that and finances and personal finances is that a lot of parents feel like they're not qualified to teach about personal finances. Right. And so they don't talk about money. It becomes a taboo subject. So first thing you need to do is realize that it can't be a taboo subject because your kids are going to get an education in personal finance, whether you help them with it or not. Or you are going to learn lessons, right? And if you've been someone who's made a lot of mistakes along the way, well, guess what? You know ways not to do it, and you're still qualified to teach these things, right? If you have if you don't want to talk about it because you don't want your kids to think bad about you, don't think that because they're going to get a bad education from somebody else. And so it doesn't have their best intentions. Someone's going to teach them. I promise you that. It'll be the world or it'll be somebody that tries to take advantage of them. But so what we need to do is begin to pull the information in and open the dialogue with our kids. Right. I do in our podcast, we do a high impact one. It's an 8 to 10 minute series that I ask a question about something that you could teach and be an actionable item. And the whole goal behind it is to listen for 8 to 10 minutes, take your earbuds out or take your headphones off, and then go talk to your kids for 10 to 15 minutes. Those little ramifications once a week, you'd had 52 talks about money in a year. And it'd take you 20 to 30 minutes in a week. And the amazing thing of what happens with kids is that their timeline is so much longer, right? That the smallest change in their trajectory is going to have a huge outcome on the end, right? When you only have 20 years to do something, and that sounds, don't get me wrong, it's a lot of time. So if you're in a bad situation, like you got 20 years, you got a lot of years to fix things. But if you got 65 years, man, I'm legitimately telling you this, like you could put $10 a week away as a 16-year-old and put it in an S&P 500 thing, and I can get into the nuts and bolts about it, but like $10 a week yields you like $1.5 million in retirement because they have time. They have time for compound interest. So whether they do massively successful things in their life, they buy the right houses, they build the right businesses, they, make the right investments, all that stuff doesn't matter at $10 a week if you've got 65 years. And so it's really just opening that door that it's okay to talk to you about it because that relationship gets closer and closer. If you don't talk to your kids about money, when they have challenges in life, and they will, because like we all do, it's a dominating force, unfortunately, in our lives. So we have to realize that they're going to be able to talk to you and open up and say, hey, I screwed up, or what do you think I should do? But if you don't talk to them about it, then they're just going to make a decision. And for the most part, unfortunately, it's not set up for them to win a lot of times. The person who's lending the money is the one that's going to make the money, right? The banks, they don't close a lot of banks, right?
Exactly. No, you're absolutely right. That was terrific. I love that. See, 1 second. Boom. He did. He definitely did. And then we go to this. Boom. So everybody out there, if you want more information, go to themoneytalkers.com. Check it out. Absolutely highly recommend it. Cody, thank you so much for being on, man. What are other good ways to get in contact with you, to connect with you, to ask you questions, follow you, whatever it is?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do a lot of quick hitting stuff on Instagram. So you can just check at the Money Talkers. Also, we have the Money Talkers podcast. It's on every kind of distribution channel out there, iTunes and Stitcher and Spotify and all those fun things. So you can just search for the Money Talkers podcast. I bring a lot of guests on They're just wonderful coaches and entrepreneurs and thought leaders. And we talk about these things that give you actionable advice to be able to spend time to talk to your kids about money.
Mhm.
And so you can check me out there. And then also the last place is there's a Facebook group that you can join. Just put in the search bar Money Talkers. It'll pop up there with the little pig there. The little piggy bank will hop up in there, and you can join in, meet other parents that are doing similar things with their kids that are looking for ways to help them be successful.
That's fantastic. Absolutely love it. Oh, there we go. Compound interest, the eighth wonder of the world.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Gary.
That was Albert Einstein said that compound interest was the strongest force in the universe.
Nice.
Pretty smart guy. So
Yup. That's absolutely for sure. Gary, thanks for joining us, man. Everybody else, thank you so much for joining us. Cody, again, thank you so much for coming out. Really appreciate it. Actually got tons of other questions. So most likely we'll invite you again to go a little bit deeper on that. Yeah. I appreciate that. That's great. So everybody else, thank you. Have a great day. Next week we're on again. And there are some surprises coming up in the near future. Got some great guests coming on really, really soon.
Thanks.
All right, everybody. See you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.